and welcome to another video. My name is Jazz, or V, whatever you like to call me. I don't mind. And this is the last video of 2025. Yeah, this year has gone by. I don't know if it was that fast. I feel a lot changed in my life, at least in 2025. But today I'm here because I want to talk to you about my 5-star reads of the year. If you want to get a glimpse into my rating system, you can check the last video where I explained how I rate my books, so then you can understand like what thought goes into my 5-star reads. I'm excited. Obviously, it's not yet the 1st of January, so I don't know, my reading year has not ended. However, the books I'm reading right now, I know they won't be 5-star reads. I can just tell it's not. They're not giving me the feelings. So I thought, yeah, I can do that before the year ends. Now, before I want to talk to you about the 8 books that got a 5-star rating from me this year, I would like to mention some honorable entries, some that got 4 stars and that are definitely among my favorite books. So the first one, it's the only romance that got my heart this year, like really a book I think about often. It was an anticipated read for me for the year of 2025. It was amazing, and of course it's A Treachery of Swans by A.B. Poranek. I love this book. This is a sapphic Swan Lake retelling, and it's written in the point of view of Odette, and it's amazing. It's actually so amazing that I got 2 versions of it. I got this beautiful, that was my first special edition I think I've ever got of a book. It's the Illumicrate exclusive edition of this book. It's so beautiful, and I love the cover. I love everything about it. I love this book so much. I was like, I need this special edition cover. So this one is the book I read. I read it on release. I pre-ordered it, so it was delivered to me on release date, and I immediately read it. It took me like 3 days to read it. I loved it. I love the setting. I love the characters. So very worthy honorable mention. My favorite 4-star read, I would say, and a romance that just lives in my head still. Both romances by A.B. Poranek, or both books by A.B. Poranek, the couples are in my head. They live with me. I love them so much. So yeah, that is my first honorable mention. Then my second honorable mention is a book I read with my book club, and it's Human Acts. Oh, my camera doesn't like a white cover. It's Human Acts by Kang. Oh, what an amazing read. It really stayed with me for such a long time. I'm still thinking about it often. It's historical fiction. It's about the Guan Yu massacre and its implications for the future as well, and how it still impacts people today. It's about generational trauma, and it's a very personal book to the author, and you can really tell. I found this book was so beautifully put together. Every chapter showed us a different angle, a different perspective, a different feeling towards this, and it was just extremely moving, extremely touching, and wow, that book was very impactful for me. If you're interested in Korea in general and Korean history and recent Korean history, you should read this book. It is, wow, it's really, really crazy what happened there and the way she wrote it. And then also I did quite some research afterwards or during it as well, like the way she got criticized for writing this book, or people still deny that this happened, it's insane. Very impressive read. I recommended it to so many of my friends and they picked it up. So another honorable mention. Then the third honorable mention I have is The Cat Who Saved Books by Sōsuke Natsukawa, so a Japanese book, originally Japanese. I read it in English. I got this version, or just this book, I got it from a pen pal of mine. I know you're watching. Thank you again so much for this book. I loved it so much. And this book, I liked it so much because it's a book about books, you know. It's a book that makes you think about what you do as a reader. It is basically, if you've ever watched a book talk rant video, that's the novel form of it, but without being so like mean about it. I would say it like that. But it's very much touches on the topics of overconsumption, reading for numbers, and like what do we actually want from books, and what is the value of a book and a read, and what does it mean to read a book. And I thought that was really amazing and made me think a lot, and I definitely think people who read books read this one. And then the fourth honorable mention I don't have physically, and I read it this month in December, so next week you will hear my full thoughts on it, but it's Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. Really enjoyable read. Trevor Noah, if you know any of his stages, he writes the same as he performs as a stand-up comedian, and that really made such a hard story very digestible, and it was just insane to read about his life, and it's kind of ridiculous the things that happened to him and how he got where he is and what he went through. And I think it's also an extremely valuable lesson in history. To me, it made understanding racism more approachable because he gave many examples on how systematic racism works and showed it very well on how it affects real people, real lives in the long term. Just because you get rid of an oppressive government does not mean you get rid of the oppressive system. So yeah, very impressive read, also one I would recommend. So, with the honorable mentions done, 4 of them, let's get into the 8 books that I gave a 5-star rating to this year. Now, I will not make a ranking. There's not a book that I would say, oh, this one is my favorite. What I will do is I will go through the year, so I will tell you about them in order of me reading them. I also will tell you in which month I read them. Now, first of all, a fun fact. I actually only own one of these books physically. That's a little crazy. And I want to own all of them, to be honest. But I've read all the others as ebooks. Actually, I think except for one. One was an audiobook, but the rest were all ebooks. So I own them as an ebook, but I definitely also will want to get a physical copy of them because they were books that I think were impactful and I would like to rent out to friends and family so everyone can read them. Let's start with the first book. So my first 5-star read happened in February of this year. It's by none other than Octavia E. Butler. It's of course Kindred. That book was insane. It touched me so deeply. So it's a book about a woman who, against her will, time travels into times of slavery. So she's a black woman living in the 1960s California, and she gets transferred back into the South during slave time. And this book was one of those books, I mean, Octavia writes in a way that makes it so engaging, but I could almost not put it down. And at the same time, because of the harshness of the story, the brutality, it made me anxious. You know, it was a scary book. I also almost couldn't pick it up every single time. Like, I had to get myself to pick it up, and at the same time I would sacrifice sleep for reading this book. The big question the book asked, and that I thought about a lot, was just because it's better something doesn't mean it was good. Like, if you can compare, because that was a lot about it, like, oh yeah, okay, she's living in the 60s now, there's still racism, they're still fighting for their rights, but you know, it's not as bad as slavery. And then when we were actually in times of slavery, it was like, oh, but like in the history books it sounded so much worse, so it's not that bad. Like, they get at least that. And this whole thing about just because it's not the worst thing you can imagine, that does not mean it's okay. And I think that was like the big takeaway I also had of this book, and the big question that always kind of pulled on these characters, going like, well, you know, it's not that bad. Can't we just like say it's all right? No, we can't. And I think that was one big thing that really, really touched me. And then also I felt Octavia just had a really brilliant way of showing the lives of these people, and like also the contradictions between the master being in charge of caring for these people, but also being the one punishing them and hurting them and just being evil all over, and just this push and pull. It was really polarizing to me, and it was crazy, and my heart, I'm telling you, I felt so much with these characters, and I'm again and again so shocked about all the things that happen in recent history. It's not long ago, you know, it's less than 200 years since slavery was abolished in the US, right? And it's also not like things like this aren't happening today, and I think that is the worst part, to just be aware of humans do these kinds of things to other humans willingly. And that is the shocking part to me. So yeah, amazing read. I feel mandatory read, must read. Extremely touching, extremely impressive, extremely devastating as well. So yeah, that was my first 5-star read of the year. Then my next 5-star read came around in May. So I actually had 2 5-star reads in May. I read a ton of books in May because I was traveling, and the first one that got 5 stars from me is a classic, and it's Alice's Adventure in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Oh, what can I say? That book, I loved it. The book is a conceptual book to me because it plays so so much on the time. If you read it and you've paid attention to time, you notice that if we're thinking about it logically, this book probably plays in 5 minutes. Let's be for real. But because it's a dream or not, you know, we're not sure. Because of all of that, it just makes it, time is warped and time is strange, and sometimes things happen slowly, sometimes things go on for 24 hours seemingly, but at the same time, everything around us is still moving at regular speed. And I just really loved that, and I thought the characters were amazing. I really enjoyed that. I loved how Alice was like going about this world. I really felt seen in Alice in a strange way. I still remember I was reading the book and was in like bed, and my roommate, because I was rooming with a friend, she was like busy on her phone, and then I just go like, oh, Alice is autistic. And she was like, please stop talking about this book. I just was so obsessed. I told everyone about the book, and I just had to give it 5 stars. I thought it was amazing. Best classic I've read so far, I think. And it was also just so whimsy. It was full of whimsy, and if I love something, it's a good amount of whim. If you know something about me. Whimsy. I love whimsy. Then the second book in May that I gave 5 stars to was a biographical book, so it was non-fiction. It's the only non-fiction book on my 5-star reads, and it's like rare that I give a non-fiction book 5 stars, but you know, I'm a fan of Octavia E. Butler, and so I gave 5 stars to A Handful of Earth, A Handful of Sky by Lynell George, which is a biographical book about the childhood, the youth, and the early life as an author from Octavia E. Butler. Now, I think we've established that I love Octavia, right? And this book I thought was really fascinating because it really gave a look into her brain in a way, because they had diary entries. Oh my God. And I love diary entries because you could really see how did this woman think. And then also I felt it was so touching to just see the struggles she went through as a Black woman growing up in the time she grew up, and how she actually had to fight all the odds to get where she was. I mean, Octavia was dyslexic, for example, and she ended up like still writing, and how the teachers would treat her, and how one good teacher can like change your entire life just by supporting you. I found it extremely fascinating to just read about her journey, and to be honest, you know, you can tell that Lynell George is a fan of Octavia as well, so it was also a bit of an homage to her, and it just made me want to read her works even more, and I thought that was a really amazingly put together book in honor of Octavia E. Butler, and I just had to give it 5 stars. It's amazing. There were so many quotes of Octavia as well, and just beautiful book, really enjoyed it. I listened to it as an audiobook. I remember I was in the bus from Croatia to Bosnia Herzegovina, and I was just listening to that audiobook while our little bus was just like driving through the countryside, and I just, yeah, core memory. Staying with me. So next up is August. So in August I also had 2 5-star reads, and the first one was Bolo Bolo by P. M. It's a book by a Swiss author. It's originally written in German. There should be a translation because it was very impactful when it came out, and it's a utopia. And I actually can't tell you too much because there's not like, it's not a novel per se, it's more like a concept. It's not about a person, it's about us as a whole. But to me, this book was very impactful because it kind of broke up things that I take for granted. So living under capitalism, or generally living under globalism, I would say, even in today's world, there's certain things that we take for granted that just are as they are. For example, we have money. That's a good example, actually. And this book kind of breaks that open and goes, well, but what if we wouldn't? And kind of explores how we could live as a society if we wouldn't have these restrictions of monetary needs, for example. It just very much breaks up things that we think we can't live without, and kind of shows ways on how it's possible. And it also goes down to like human nature and human goodness. I just really love this book, and I think for us living in the circumstances we live with limited autonomy due to the system, I would like to say, I feel a book like this could be extremely powerful. It was extremely powerful as well. Like in Switzerland, there was a whole movement after the release of this book toward living differently and living in communities more. There's still a move like that. Of course, the movement is not big, but there are people who very much feel inspired by what the book said, and I personally just thought it was an amazing read, and it really makes you think. It makes you question whether or not things really just have to be the way they are, or if there is the possibility to actually change things if we actually want them, and how we as a collective, we as the people, can actually work on that. The second book in August that got 5 stars from me, it's more of a story than a whole book, is the short story Everyday Use by Alice Walker. So this book, I can't tell you too much because obviously it's a short story. I think it's about 30 pages. It's a really quick read, but it was extremely impactful to me. It explores cultural identity, generational trauma, and rituals through a mother and her 2 daughters, so a female perspective on the whole thing in a Black family in the USA. And I thought this story brought up so many questions for me and so many thoughts, and I felt it was extremely provocative in a way to like make you think critically about things. So one of the big questions that this book posed was, is there a correct way to live your culture? Because we have a dynamic in this book that kind of shows different ways of how you can go about cultural heritage and preserving culture especially. And there's also a lot of judgment on like, is it a right way, is it a wrong way? There's also a great light on the Pan-African movement and how it also affected families. For example, if one part of the family was part of the Pan-African movement and the other one doesn't, and what that does to people and how it makes your perspective shift on what is actually your heritage, where do you belong, and if the people around you actually align with that. So I felt that was extremely interesting to me. And I mainly gave it 5 stars because I think it really puts a light on how just because someone is Black doesn't mean they live their culture the same way as another Black person, for example. Or just because someone is from one specific country or one specific city or region or whatever, that doesn't mean that it's one type of thing. So it also tackles stereotypes in a way, but not from the outside perspective of someone learning to not being an asshole, but from the inside perspective of just showing that there are different ways you can live your life and be happy and still be true to yourself and your family and your culture. And that's why I think this story is a 5 star to me, because I think people should read about that. It can make you realize things, like even me, and I grow up with siblings that have completely different lifestyles from me and live their life differently. And even for me, there were big questions that came up due to that book that I discussed with the people I read the book. I really enjoyed that one as well. It was very thought-provoking. Then in September, I had 2 reads again. So they always came in pairs, or not always, but they came in pairs 3 times in a row. 6 of them were always paired up. And the first one was Here You Are by Di Jun. So that is a graphic novel slash webcomic slash a manhwa, so a Chinese manga, and I read it on my phone because that's, as a webcomic, that's the easiest. However, it is getting traditionally published at the moment in different volumes, and I will definitely get them all because this story. So this story is a coming out story and a love story between 2 gay men. It very much showed what it could mean to come out in a conservative society, but also in a society where there's a one-child policy, which means you're the only offspring of your family, and in combination with filial piety, which put this whole, like, as a young person, how do you navigate expectations from society, expectations from your family, and your true identity, expectations from your partner as well, or the person you're in love with? How do you navigate all of those? How do you get by? How can you make it up to everyone while still being true to yourself? Or do you even have to make it up to everyone if you want to be true to yourself? Maybe you have to let go of something. That story, it made me cry, it made me laugh, it made me yearn, it gave me all the feels, and I really feel like among the BL romances that you could read, that's one of those stories that really deserves the #1 spot for me forever, like all time. I've read it like 5-6 years ago for the first time. I immediately fell in love, read it again, and it just got better. So yeah, especially the main story. There's side stories as well, which also explore these themes, which I also thought were executed so well, but the main story, I loved so much. My heart belongs to them. And then finally, the last book that got a 5-star rating for me was Discovery by J.A.J. Minton in October. My god, what a book. So that's also a 2025 release. I did not read it on release date. I think it was released in April or May. And my goodness, what a story. Is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy? Is it both together? It's a first contact story playing on Earth with an alien that was already on Earth, and it was executed perfectly. I'm so in love with it. I actually have this one. So Discovery by J.A.J. Minton. I almost forgot that I have it because I've been telling you about books that I don't physically own. But yeah, I have a whole video on this book. If you're curious, I will link it below so you can watch that one if you haven't already. Totally in love with it. It was so well executed. The characters are amazing. The narration is fantastic. I love it. And it just is so engaging. I wanted to get back to this book all the time. I would have wanted to read it all night long. Of course, I couldn't. I had obligations, but it was just blew my mind. Fantastically done. The big themes it explores is societal collapse, technological advancements, and AI, and then also religion. So it was just amazing. The stage was the entire world, and it never felt too big, to be honest. It always felt familiar. It always felt a good amount of space. It was just amazing. Please go watch the video if you want to know more about it. I just loved this book. So yeah, Discovery by J.J. Minton, wonderful. Amazing. So this brings us to the end of my list. So these were the 8 books I've rated 5 stars this year. I've read 70 books and 8 of them got a 5-star rating. That's quite something, and I'm just really happy with the 8 books that ended up getting 5 stars. I really hope next year I have a similar amount of amazing reads that will be moving enough to give them 5 stars. And yeah, that was it. That's the last video of 2025. The next video will be my December reads, of course, and after that I hope I can bring you my reading journal flip through. I'll do my best that it's possible. I'm still not sure about the setup, but it's gonna be great. I'm currently setting up my reading journal for 2026. You can see parts of that in my upcoming vlog, December vlog. What was your #1 read, 5-star read of the year? Tell me down in the comments, and then all I can say is like, subscribe, click the notification bell if you haven't already, and I will see you in the new year. Happy New Year. See you soon. Goodbye.